Anyways, good luck, you guys.
Thank you. Thank you. So much. Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Fadu. I'm also playing the judge for my exam. All the best.
Thank you.
So I'm going to go through speaking orders for teams and also pronoun preferences. So start with OG, who's speaking first? Megan first. Who's speaking second?
Cavan.
Cavan. Okay. Great. OO, who's speaking first? Okay. Who's speaking second? Calvin. Okay. Cool. CG, who's speaking first?
Azim's first, ideally second.
Okay. Great. CO, who's speaking first? Lovely. Without so you can take it. Okay. So without any further ado, I call upon Prime Minister to open today's debate here.
I think it's important to set a little bit of context within this debate today. So currently we're talking about people who are currently oppressed within society, who do not have that much of a voice within society. Understand that they, out of all people, need the most help and the most empowerment within society, and I'll be explaining to you why, specifically classical literature and specifically classical types of art, through this idea of queering, we're going to improve things for them and we're going to empower them. Okay, so what does it look like within society today? So the type of measures that we see for these in the LGBTQIA+, are type of measures that I think are quite tokenistic. These look like measures that are quite political based, and when movies such as Love, Simon or current movies or current types of art that come out today that represent the LGBTQ today are quite political, and it makes them feel tokenistic. I would argue to you today that when you introduce something that is classical, you argue or you discuss based on a level that is purely based on the art form, and it's not something that's in current day. That's something that's political. I would say that it's less tokenistic, and it's something that would empower them more. So let's explain to you. No, thank you. Let's explain to you what queering looks like. So queering looks like reinterpretation of art, and I'll have a substantive later on why this is principally justified, and secondly on how we better empower people. But back to how queering looks like. So queering looks like reinterpretation of certain types of art forms such as literature, right? So this looks like encouraging literature majors to reinterpret certain texts. This looks like drama students who study literature texts to reenact certain plays, but with different genders based on interpretation. And this also looks like analyzing text within education, within schools in a different way, with reinterpreting them to be of a certain different gender or a different type of relationship between characters. So into my first substantive on why it's principally consistent, basically why it's justified. So let's set the premise of what art is supposed to be about. So art is about interpretation. It has two main things to it, right? Firstly, it's about sending out a certain message towards society, and secondly, it's about being meaningful. So the thing is, art is about interpretation. It's about the type of meaning that people derive from it. It's the type of understanding and interpretation that people derive from it. If art cannot be meaningful to people, then that necessarily means that it's not fulfilled its purpose. If it doesn't help people actualize something about themselves or give them a new idea about themselves, then it doesn't actually become something that is meaningful. I would argue to you today, if classical art, because the very fact that that's characterize something, right? Classical art in the past has been very heteronormative, meaning that most of the time in classical literature and classical art hasn't talked about issues like the LGBTQ, which means that within society today, if you do not allow it to be classical, then it brings about this idea that being gay or being a lesbian is something that is only occurs within the 21st century. This ultimately means that you lock out a lot of things and you make them feel even more alienated than they already do within the society today. And we think that this is something that everyone has a right to. Everyone has a right to reinterpret different types of art forms. And we think that that's something that's principally justified, especially if it's about fulfilling a certain idea of yourself. But secondly, let's talk about how we empower people, right? So there are three main parts to this. Firstly, let's talk about how they are within society today. Currently within society, I would argue to you that within, for example, Western liberal democracies, it has the rate of progress or rate of change for them, for progressiveness, has slowed down. Why is this so? This is because people presume that, it is now better for them. But I would argue that on our side of the house, when we introduce new forms of literature, new like classical forms of literature reinterpreted, I would say that this acts as a place where people can make revenue and capital out of. This means that there's more incentive for businesses and for people to focus on these LGBT kinds of ideas, and this means that ultimately you get more representation on the side of the house. Yes.
If people are apathetic and feel as if the status quo is better for them, why wouldn't queering add to this apathy as opposed to detract from it?
Okay, I think that rather on their side of your side of the house. Well, okay, so the comparative is that on your side of the house there is basically going to be no change. But I would argue to you, as I'm going to explain later on my substantive, that on our side of the house we actually are going to get more discourse that is actually useful towards people within the society. But okay, let me get back to my speech. Okay, so currently within today, I would say that there's no actual meaningful discourse whereby there's no like meaningful progression as to what is as to changing mindsets. It's more of a political tool that is used. I would say that these people feel invisible within society, but the thing is, at a point in which you allow classical forms of art to be shown as something that is representative, that there have been homosexuals for centuries, that is when you truly empower them and you make them feel like they are people, and you make them feel like they are people who can be respected, and they're not something who are like aliens. And this changes perceptions of people within society, right? Because this allows them to understand that these people are not people who have just like sprung up out of nowhere. This allows them to understand that these are people who have actual feelings, and this means that ultimately there's going to be a better discussion. Why is this so? Even if for example, they try and argue that, oh, there's going to be discourse, which means there's going to be like people within society who are going to be angry, I would argue to you that this discussion is actually meaningful. Why is this so? Because understand that this discussion is very different from current types of discussion that happens today, right? It questions what is homosexuality. Should homosexuality be represented within those type of art forms? This means that ultimately you humanize these people because of the right fact that you have these discussions on that level, but not on a level that is significantly political. And because of that, why is this better, right? This is better because then you empower those who are in the LGBTQ. They no longer feel like they are invisible. They no longer feel like they are alienated. They rather are included within the discussions that have perhaps slowed down within status quo, and you include them within the discussions. This ultimately means that, especially since I've already explained to you what queering will look like, this means that you get a wider range of awareness from people and from others outside as to what exactly homosexuality looks like. When they delve into ideas such as like what type of relationships between homosexuals look like, or the type of people who are queer, or the type of meanings and the struggles that they go through, this actually means that there's going to be a wider platform as for them to views to be represented, and therefore I'm proud to propose.
Great, I thank the PM and I call upon the opposition to continue the debate today. Great here.
Okay, sir.
You
Yeah,
you consent, right?
yeah. Okay, sir.
Yeah.
So I think in the previous speech, I didn't really hear any analysis as to what is important in terms of the identity of LGBTQIA. I think Megan conclusively told you that it's important for them to feel validated and that they have existed in the past. When all of society tells you that you are valid, that you exist, and that you are part of society, but somehow when it comes to the field of literature, it's absurd for you to say that maybe this character was homosexual. I think that this is very disingenuous. And if no other actor in this debate would push for that inclusiveness in that specific field, then I think that is the duty of the LGBTQI movement in terms of getting the validation, in terms of getting that not being erased from the history. What did we hear from the previous speaker? The first was an assertion that this debate was one of zero-sum game where there's limited societal bandwidth and somehow we need to allocate resources. The resources that we are using to promote queering is exclusively only used within the literature field, right? It's unclear to me why a filmmaker would somehow not be able to make a film if he's not doing literature, right? They use different resources. This debate is not one about a zero-sum game, right? Clearly, these literature professors won't be doing anything else if they weren't queering, right? But more importantly, is that there's no analysis on the idea of societal bandwidth, and we're going to tell you why this expands bandwidth in terms of discussion. Because Megan told you that there was a complacency status quo when people think that homosexuals are settled within society and they hide behind the veneer of maybe we pass certain legislature changes, right? Given the fact that there's a complacency in the field of literature, that means that you expand the societal bandwidth when you create a backlash that Amrit was talking about, right? Because when people start getting angry or when they start being concerned, this is where they actually have to confront homosexual identities in the past. I'll take you later. More importantly, is that there's no analysis as to what literature actually is. They claim to say that Shakespeare is a straight person who creates plays for straight people. Did they ask Shakespeare is he straight? No, right? Literature is constantly in a state of flux, of interpretation. Constantly people are reinterpreting text, and it's unclear to me why you should lock people out from saying that maybe this film was one of like a homosexual identity. No thanks. They say, oh, there's ambiguity. They say, oh, maybe you don't really conclusively know. This applies to every single aspect of when you interpret literature in the first place, right? What happens on their side of the house is that you can explore all kinds of interpretations. You can say maybe Shakespeare play was about capitalism, maybe Shakespeare play was about antinatalism, but you can't say it's about LGBTQIA. That sounds like oppression to me. That sounds like you're erasing their identity. Because when it comes to everything else, it's valid, it's academic, it's intellectual. But when it comes to LGBTQ identity, it's a fan theory, it's absurd. This is the kind of erasure and tacit oppression that makes people don't feel valid. And I'm going to explain to you the impact of this later on. Oh, no thanks. So I think that the comparative here, which is about like things like Love, Simon, or films that like tended towards the LGBTQIA identity, can exist on outside of the house as well because they use different resources in the first place, right? But recognize that they serve very two distinct purposes, right? Like the exploration of struggles that homosexuals face with the film is something that we support and we celebrate on outside the house as well. But in terms of them being accepted in history and being recognized that they have existed in the past, this is something that you can only exclusively get when you challenge the systematic barrier that exists within the academic industry that they don't get. No thanks. I think that when you interpret classical literature, you change the lens in which people view these things, right? Because now you can finally view it through the lens of an LGBTQIA person, which has been systematically denied from them because countries have like been historically conservative in nature. When they're finally allowed to view the lens through their own identity and their own experiences, when they are empowered with the ability to see stories and narratives through the experiences and lived experiences of an LGBTQIA person, this is intrinsically very meaningful to them because art can like the core and intimate aspects of their identity. I'll take you later. So given that that's the case, right? Given that literature is in a constant state of interpretation, this means that it's passive oppression in terms of when you say that, oh, this is off bounds, you cannot really touch this or say that this like this theory exists. Before I move on, yes.
So your method of getting societal bandwidth is by incurring the backlash towards these queerified characters, which you expect LGBT people to look at and find representation. Which one is it? Do you want a backlash that is inherently harmful to them, or do you want representation? You can't have both.
I think we can get both. I think in terms of what happens in backlash is that their side is one where people get hide behind the veneer. No, we're not really like anti-LGBTQ, right? Because we have some policy legislator. But in terms of like when it comes to my academics, no, don't touch that, right? I don't understand how that functions on their side of the house. But more importantly, all kinds of discourse functions around backlash in the first place, right? It's unclear to me why people are so intimate with Romeo and Juliet, right? When someone says, oh, Romeo might be gay, people start going up in arms, right? People don't respond to literature in that way. It's not like it's not like Star Wars, right? Or like Game of Thrones, right? Literature is something that's academic and intellectual in nature, where people start like saying, oh, maybe Romeo was homosexual and you're using Juliet as a cover-up for the fact he's homosexual. People don't go, I'm angry at you. People go, that's interesting. And people go, that's interesting. That's when you get the meaningful discourse in terms of homosexual representation in the past, right? In terms of them being existing. Like, So the thing that Megan told you that's extremely important that went conclusively unresponded to was this idea of how people view homosexuality. When you look at the Bible Belt, when you look at conservatives, the argument they gave was it's a phase, right? It's something that only existed in the 21st century. It doesn't exist in the past. When this is empirically and true, where when you look at ancient Greece, when you look at India, these are places that have homosexual or like trans people in the past, right? But when it comes to interpreting this text, that maybe this person, since we historically accepted that ancient Greece in the past was a place that had homosexuality, why can't we explore that realm given like text in ancient Greece, right? If that was empirically true, then it's principally consistent in the realm of literature and in the realm of academics. Don't lose sight of the angle in this debate. This debate is one of tacit oppression in the realm of academics in the first place. So I think the last thing I want to bring to you is the broad goals of the LGBTQIA movement and the broad goals of how we run and empower these people. Because I think it's extremely insensitive for them to say that your identity could not have possibly existed in the past, that Shakespeare could not have possibly in any conception of reality have meant for this character to be homosexual. Because if we accept that these people are humans and these people's identities are valid and intimate to them, then it's unclear to me why this form of representation does not extend to the realm of literature in the first place. I think that there is a principal claim that these people have towards this literature and pieces of art. Because society has historically been constructed around heteronormative frames, right? The lens in which everyone has viewed narratives and movies and literature has historically been heteronormative in nature. Given that now we're finally seeing a push in terms of accepting LGBTQIA identity, this means that this is finally the time in which these people can finally get a principal claim to things that have existed in the past. That they are not told that their identity is one of a fact, when they're not told that their identity is something that they will grow out of. The only way in which we can conclusively get this is to include them as part of human history as well. Because even if I buy all the benefits coming from opening opposition, the extent of the acceptance they get is only in the present, right? They're constantly being told that it could not have possibly existed in the literature and history of the past. And given that this is inherently oppressive in nature, to tell an individual that Shakespeare could not have possibly meant this, when you're willing to interpret his text in every other aspect, I don't think that this is something that the LGBTQIA movement should stand for, right? Given that they are the only actor, presumably, in this debate that would likely want to engage in this in the first place. So I think that, given that that's the case, that the main thrust of opening government's case is one that pushes for something exclusive that you can only exclusively get within the realm of literature. I think that their case was one that was extremely unresponsive to the our prime minister, which for this reason is extremely proud to propose.
Great. I call upon TLO here.
can be friend. Be friend.
Met.
Yeah, I think. Okay.
It's very met.
Yeah, pantai.
Brian, are we good? Yeah. Honorable Chair, the moment when I grew up and I read all these classic books, I wanted to be Hercules. I wanted to be Robin Hood. I wanted the ability for me to become who they are. But that's where the debate lies at a problem. Because we have an opening government who discusses the principal legitimacy of whether we should do something, but not whether or not this will be a good thing. Plus the fact that they wanted to make this debate purely based on the academic value of literature. We think this debate cannot be about that. This debate must also take into consideration that the problem with LGBTQ culture, at the very least, as to how people outside of it perceive them to be, is that it puts people into stereotypes and places expectations of what they are and what they can be. You expect the idea of a gay person to be one who is fabulous, to be one who will always be feminine. And I think that's the problem, that you create the expectation of what being gay is, while only considering that these things can only be true right now, without explaining to us how exactly these people have been forced to become more heteronormative, how these people are forced to keep their ability and who they are hidden. That is what TG will bring to you. We'll tell you how exactly acceptance of the LGBTQ people can be presented within classical literature and ideas, and shows people what exactly they can look up to and normalize the idea of everyone is able to look into and how they are. We think this debate has to look into a more wide spectrum of society. Before I bring my presentation, few points of responses, I'll take you later. Actually, yeah, go now.
Okay, there are fabulousness, there is loophole, there is extravagance, there are hidden identities like Love Simon. What additional value that you can do that is worth the trade-off that you're willing to make this way?
The comparative must be, if you really want to normalize and create people to empathize and be able to empathize these ideas, especially for your fence-sitters, people who you want to change. We think making an argumentation on conservatives will be angry, won't have any value because they'll be angry no matter what, they'll be homophobic no matter what. Therefore, we need to prove to you how exactly when you create that incentive and interest for people to even watch your Love Simons, you need to show people will even care about all your LGBT movies on set options. You think that's what we'll do. We'll tell you why people are likely going to have an interest, why that interest can lead to some value of change on the house. But before that, a few points or responses. I think it's fair for opening government to argue that we can have both sides of the house, that this is not zero sum. We can still be focused on literature, still be focused on movies. In fact, we tell you that it's even better. That is even better then, because the moment you're able to show that there is an interest for people to read these books, therefore there is an interest for you to make movies about them, for you to make remakes of Robin Hood, except that show that Robin Hood and his friends really were merry men in tights, except show that in 300 Leonidas fought for the Greeks and was still great and still had enjoyment with his friends. With all 300, maybe they have an orgy area, I don't care what exactly that can happen. What we make is the ability for people to realize and have an entrance into LGBT culture, into LGBT empathy, and therefore show that there is a market to be sold, there is a target to be had. But argue, no, this means you now make things ambiguous and don't show them the value of the sexuality. Yes, that's the point, panel. Because inside the school, when you tell someone that they are gay, the stereotype is that they are absolutely gay, that being gay is the only thing that matters to them. That in most stereotypical movies about LGBTQ people, they are gay and that's it. That's literally their identity. That's exactly what happened in Modern Family. But as you move on and progress in society, what you do have is to show that people can be great on their own. Hercules and Odysseus or Perseus can fight on their own, can protect the great nations, while at the same time just be gay, because they are not defined by their identity. What we show is the ability for LGBT people to be more inclusive, to choose what their identities are and what it represents. That is what I think is the most important aspect of this debate. Closing, if you have anything, I'll take you first. No, then come in.
So A, if the leads are always portrayed to be straight, how do you make them gay? But B, even if you are able to make them gay, how beneficial is this that you want to make a story about 300 people having a gay orgy?
Yeah.
Glad you.
So one, we're okay with reinterpreting something to be very vague, or even then we'll just rewrite something. We'll find that these things aren't copyrighted anyway. But what's important is the principle that's based upon that we are able to show that someone is not defined by the heteronormativity, that someone is able to be gay, independent of everything else. Why is this important? Because while opening government tells you about the argument of why people are forced upon the idea of time and people are attacked, we think it's more important then that you show how people were forced to change and were forced to be hidden in the closet in status quo. This is in direct response to opening opposition, because they said we have to call them out and say that it's bad. You know what conservatives will say then? You know what defensives will say then? That it's unfair for you to attack someone based on the products of their time. It's unfair for you to attack someone in the 16th century when slavery was the norm for them to believe that slavery is bad. It's only fair for you to attack them when the whole world has changed. It's only fair to attack them when they are no longer ignorant. What we do then is show that ignorance is always there, because conservatives will always say in status quo that the old times was the best, that it was the time of social purity, that no horrible things happened. But no, we corrupt that. We tell them that their idea of the best time in period, their idea of making conservatives great again isn't there, and it never was. The ability for them to tell people that back then everyone was good and never gay, now it's destroyed, because we tell you because on our side of the house we normalize the idea that these people can be gay no matter what, that being gay has no defined characteristics, that being LGBT does not depend on whatever you are. Why is this important, panel? Because we think this will affect your fences the most. People who are more often moderate and likely when want to be able to shape these actions, these people are likely to be apathetic. This one are likely either one to be apathetic, second don't have enough exposure to LGBT culture, and third can't fully empathize with these identities. What you do then is the moment you insert the idea that these characters could be gay, you create that cognitive dissonance and starts that questioning. These people who are already used to LGBT inclusion in popular media are likely to not be as angry as what opening opposition has said. But what is likely to happen is that these people start to perceive heteronormativity as maybe a part of being gay. These people are able to see that their characters are someone that they can empathize with, that their characters are someone that can be gay. It's not just that level. It's also the ability for LGBTQ people to be able to empathize and see themselves in whatever character exists. The ability for them to be inspired by Robin Hood, who's not defined by his gayness, means that a gay person inside the school does not need to be defined by their gayness. We tell you that this creates a level of inclusion. This creates a level of possibility for someone to live the way they are, not to be defined by whatever their sexuality is, but justified by their actions, by who they are, and what they can do, proud to propose.
Great, I thank you, member of Cabinet. I call upon member of KLOC. Here.
How do you shut these things out?
Whoever's been watching this will get so confused.
Yeah.
I think to close this debate, I would like to explain why CO is the only team who's being a lot more comparative compared to all the other teams here. Because I think even if we do bite the bullet and say that, look, you can actually write the history, maybe you can actually rewrite those classic literatures, but why is this ability exactly bad? Because like what Nicholas told you before, I think since we all agree that these classical literatures in nature doesn't really have LGBTQ traits because they are written at the long time in the history, therefore people do not really have the same amount of awareness at that time, therefore maybe they don't have LGBT characteristic in that literature itself. So what does Nicholas have told you, right? I think Nicholas explained to you that exactly because of this characteristic itself, it is more likely for the people to nitpick every single little detail, maybe like every single gesture that Dumbledore makes, for example, like for example, him being a gentle person, for example, they will interpret this as something that looks gay. It means that they will nitpick every characteristic and to tailor it into something that is connected with gay traits, right? And I think this is very, very harmful because we told you that the moment when you create this exclusivity on how to be gay, for example, it makes people think that you need to fulfill certain standards in order to be included in the gay community itself. It means that the gay community itself will not be something that is inclusive, but people will actually question, like for example, if you have very masculine traits, you have like boyish haircut or etc., people will assume that you are not as gay as the other people in that community, which means that you are not like 100% gay and you should not be included in the community as a whole, right? And why this is very, very bad? Because we told you that it means that these people are not included in the movement itself. These people are not included in the list of the people who deserve the support itself. But I will divide my speech today in several simple clashes to understand. Before that, yes.
This debate is about classical literature. No one knows whether Shakespeare was actually straight or his stories were meant to be heteronormative. It's assumed that way because society was historically heteronormative. Why can't we explore the ideas that maybe Romeo was not sexual?
Look, the idea is foreign, like what we told you, it's not exclusive by these classical literatures. They need to prove to us why it has to be through these classical literatures. Because number one, look, these classical literatures at the end of the day, at their best case scenario, is only accessible to a certain amount of people, right? It is only accessible to people who understand highbrow arts, for example, people who understand English as like in the high level of the language itself. It is not accessible to many layers of society at best, right? They need to prove to you why our way, which is promoting it through the mainstream media, is not more effective under their side of the house. But my first class is about the people's reaction on the queering itself, because we agree, like it will definitely cause certain discourses. Because we want to engage on this, right? They are trying to claim that look, at least it is okay because it is including these people. They have representative in these discourses. But we say that is exactly a bad discourse that we do not want to take. Because they never prove to you why this discourse will be a good thing eventually. Because like what we see in the status quo right now, when people are trying too much, for example, like how people are creating caricatures of Prophet Muhammad in THBT magazines, for example, you see proofs as to how people cannot take criticism when they see it as a blasphemy or irrational itself. Now, not only LGBT people will be labeled as haters, but they will also be labeled as stupid for not being able to actually interpret those classical literatures, right? Therefore, we see that the outcome of the discourse itself, they need to prove to us why it will be a good discourse, because like what we told you, now people will only see this as irrational and etc. No thank you later. But also, the second level, why the queering itself will not have the correct portrayal like what we told you. Because is it really including the LGBT community, right? Because like what I told you, because the moment when your portrayal, like it's very attached to certain traits only, it is very dangerous because you box these people to your arbitrary standards, and we do not want this as a movement in general. Because now these people will be seen as not only stupid but also even petty. Movements that are trying to do the opposite impression too much are often failed, right? Because for example, like when feminists are trying to do men shaming, for example, these feminists are interpreted as men hater, not trying to promote equality. This is the same when you actually try to make everyone look and sound like queers. You are not actually fighting for queers, right? But you are trying to convert everyone else into queer. This will be seen as a propaganda propaganda by the people itself. Because now your movement will be seen as having extreme propaganda to confront everyone to look to become queer, to accuse everyone of being queer, for example, not promoting your own people, not advocating your own people. Because now you are trying very bad, desperately to scrap up pieces to make something sound in the literature itself, to make something looks like a queer itself. Now people will label your movement as a propaganda. Like for example, like how classical, no thank you letter, classical literature taught in school. Now people will say that you are trying to brainwash their children, for example, for trying to distort this very highbrow classical literature itself. Compare this with our alternatives, which is we tell you that status quo is enough, that actually portraying these people in movies, portraying these people in movies are better because we can control it, right? Because we do not have to nitpick everything, but rather we portray in the truth that LGBT people can actually have spectrums, people can actually represent it in different ways. That's why different actors can actually represent it. And also this is more accessible, right? Because we see that it is easy to just, pirate Netflix, that you can watch it for free. You can just go to GST instead of like understanding this logical literature itself. But also, is it worth the trade-off, right? Whether it will be effective for the forcing, opposing.
The conservatives will always be angry no matter what. What you need to show is how you can get the average middle class person to empathize with the gay Robin Hood or gay King Arthur. How do you do that on your side?
No, I told you, right? If your concern is about the average rational person, they will also easily be swayed, but even better under our side because we are promoting it through the mainstream ways. Like for example, the mainstream media, the thing that they can have access properly and easier without having the need to understand the highbrow like classical literature, right? The conservative people will even be angrier under your side of the house because you are trying too much. You are trying to nitpick everything, every single little detail, and distort it into the benefit of your movement, which is clearly something that is not inclusive to the movement itself, right? Therefore, we believe that which one is better, right? Like what I told you before, which one is better? If the acceptance of people is contingent on these stereotypes, I don't think that is the outcome that we want. Because we want a representation that is more realistic, more factual, that is more relatable to people itself. Having the portrait in Netflix that conveys, like for example, everyone can play gay roles, also gay people can play better roles as well. I think that one is better because now you are not trying too much, we are not being labeled as irrational and nitpicking by the people itself because you are sticking to the true nature. Thank you.
Right, thank you. I know Cody Bacon in roughly 10 minutes or so. Recall and justification. Good luck.
Let's take 2-3 minutes and we'll stop chatting.